Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is a James brand. That's right, the brand name is James. Maybe Jim for short. James brand county knife. And I want to thank my buddy Jim, not James, but Jim, for sending this guy along. Let's do a quick size comparison. First off, we'll compare some more traditionally sort of knives. I'm not a big traditional guy, but whatever. This is your Victorinox Classic. This is your Spyderco Rhodey, which is another slip joint, although I would hardly call it traditional. This is your Spyderco Dragonfly right here. Your Spyderco Delica, which is a good deal bigger than the James brand here. This is your Ontario Rat number 2, Ontario Rat number 1, and, oh, what the heck, a Cody Utzler custom regulator knife. Yeah, that escalated quickly, but hey, makes me happy. Why not, right? So, yeah, there you go. Let's go on ahead and go into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your James brand county knife. So on the good side, first off, this is made in the USA, according to the James brand website. They seem to be based out of Portland, and so it's always nice to see a knife that's made in the USA, although a lot of your traditional knives really are these days. Second thing is the steel on this guy. It's a 12C27, which is an old steel, but it checks out. It's still good. You've got decent edge retention, and it's actually stainless, which is more than can be said for a lot of traditional knives. So this will require a little less upkeep than some of your more traditionals. Nice. Can't argue with that. The blade shape on it is actually pretty good. It's got a flat area here, and then it's got another flat area up here. It's kind of a tanto or almost a razel, sort of. This is a Graham razel sort of thing, because you can do, if you absolutely needed to, a little tiny bit of scraping with the very front edge of this blade. It's unusual to see on a traditional knife, but, I won't argue with it. It's pretty decent. It does have a sharpening choil, which is a little unusual as well, but is nice. It makes it much easier to sharpen this knife up relative to some others. And it's actually running on washes. I can't really show that to you, but there are little phosphor bronze washes on the inside of this that, it runs on. And that's nice because a lot of traditionals actually just run right up against the edge of the liners. So there you go. That's your good. It's made in the US of A. The steel is 12C27 steel, which is stainless, which is kind of nice. It's got a nice blade shape. It's got a nice full flat grind on it, by the way. Actually got a sharpening choil. It's actually running on washes. Let's talk about the grate. On the great side is the design of this guy. I like it very much because it's traditional in many ways, but also very modern. It's using walnut here, actual walnut. But, they've also got things like this branding is very, very modern, very, very hip, very, very new. And same thing with your little laser engraved logo in the back here. And, no one's really going to mistake this for something made in the 1900s, but it's definitely got some heritage to it in that way. And also, I do like the jimping here. That's kind of a modern thing, I feel like, but it does add something, especially on a knife that's relatively slippery like this guy. And so the design here is very well done. Whichever designer made this was really thinking interestingly. I appreciate that very much. So let's talk about the bad. So on the bad side, first off, if you look at their website, holy hipster Batman. I mean, seriously, it is this multimedia adventure through pretty much everything that goes on in Portland. My jeans got skinnier just staring at that site, and I felt myself growing in a beard without my own volition. Absolutely, this is the most hipster brand I have ever seen. And you can tell that they've got their target market. They're going after people who use the term artisanal on a regular basis. And that's fine, but it's kind of funny because this knife isn't very artisanal. We'll come back to that anyways. More towards the knife's discredit. The blade is a little bit shorter than it could be because the body has all of this space devoted to a lanyard hole. I feel like this would be a much more compelling knife just proportionally if the blade was a little bit longer and they took out the lanyard hole, just put a little clip at the end there. A little loop at the end there, as you do on many traditional sorts of knives. That makes it much, much better. This is a nail nick only knife. I personally hate nail nicks with a very strong passion. The only nick I can put up with is this one right over here, and even then, some days not. And so that's a little unfortunate. And the fact that on this side, the blade is entirely hidden means that there's no way that you can pinch this guy open. So your thumbnail's in for a treat here. The blade does not lock, which is not terrible. Most traditional knives don't. But I do tend to prefer a locking blade. It just makes it a little bit safer. If you cut through something and then the back of the knife catches, you're not going to cut your fingers off. And then finally, the blade sits really awkwardly when closed. I mean, this is a knife that's got beautiful proportions, but then it's got the blade hanging out the top of it, and it's got a nice little sharp corner on here. I just don't get that. If I were the designer, I probably would have just raised this up a little bit more so you kept that nice symmetry when the blade's closed. This hanging out like that almost just feels accidental. Like the person making the handle never talked to the guy designing the blade. Not a big fan of that. And then, yeah, so I don't get that choice really at all. I think it breaks up the lines of an otherwise really pretty knife. So that's the bad. It's really, really hipster. The short blade and the long body thing's disappointing. Nail nick only, a little disappointing. The fact that it doesn't lock can be a problem in some situations. And then this blade just really sits awkwardly and does terrible things to the design. So let's go into the ugly. The ugly here is that relative to a lot of your American-made traditional knives, this is very poorly made. And I say this for a variety of reasons. The sharpening is done very unevenly. There are areas where the bevel is at one angle and areas where the bevel's at another angle. This probably just means that whoever was running the sharpener that day over in Portland wasn't terribly experienced, but it is a little bit on the ugly side, and it's not something you see from other traditional companies. The second thing is that the wood and the metal don't really match very well on this one. If you run your finger along here, you can feel a burr, a tactile area, a difference between the wood and the metal here. And in fact, if you look at it, you can see that the wood and the metal match much more closely here, for instance, than they do down here. These are little details, but these are the kinds of things that a traditional knife needs to get right to be great. There are big gaps between the scales and the backspacer here, big enough that you can actually see light through them, which is really a little bit on the ugly side. A really well-done traditional knife should look more like this seam right up here, where I'm pointing, where you can maybe see visually that there's a line, but just barely. When you get down into something like that, that just screams really poorly constructed. And the standard there is way lower than a lot of your artisanal sorts of American traditional knives. And I don't like that very much. And then when you open the knife, you see a big gap between the blade and the spring bar here in the back here. That little gap is kind of ugly. And again, it just makes me feel like, wow, this isn't so well done. And then finally, the pull on this guy, the actual feeling of opening this knife is not great. It's kind of got a very rough and jerky sort of feeling to it. I'm not a big fan of the pull on this guy. And so overall, this, to a trained knife guy, feels pretty poorly made. I'm not at all impressed with the construction of this knife, especially at the price, which is $150, which is high. You can get a lot of really high-end, American-made, actually artisanal sorts of traditional pocket knives for that price, 100%. And so, yeah, that's the ugly, is that it's just honestly not that well made, and the price implies otherwise. Let's go into the conclusions. The final conclusion here for me is that this knife is a lot more talk than it is walk. They've got a great idea here, and they've got a great design underlying it all. I mean, it's a modernized traditional knife, which is a beautiful thing. They're using a very attractive design, some very attractive materials, and, they've got good ideas here, but unfortunately, it's just not really well executed. The blade is sitting very poorly in there. The fit and finish just isn't very impressive at all, even relative to more modern traditional American knives. So ultimately, I feel like this is a knife that's got really great marketing, but very poor knife making, and it's not something I'd recommend. And so, if you're interested in a really nice traditional American pocket knife, there are many, many options for you. Places like Great Eastern Cutlery or Northwoods Knives, and even some of the little sub-brands like the Tidoutte, Tidoute Cutlery, or the Beer Scout, whatever. Either way, you're going to get made in the USA knives made by actual artisans who make their living making folding pocket knives that are going to be of better quality and, frankly, usually at a better price. So, I mean, if you're interested in getting into the traditional knife game, it's really cool. There are a ton of blogs, Instagrams, forums dedicated to traditional knives, your slip joint paradigm, whatever. And so you can do a lot of research and you can find something that's a little bit more obscure, that's not as directly marketed, but is really, really excellent and going to be much, much better. And for the meantime, you can order an Open L an Open L number 6 for, like $10. Just going to be, the price of tax you would have paid on this guy. That'll tide you over until you find your perfect American traditional knife. So unfortunately, like a lot of your, highly marketed sorts of materials, it's very pretty on the surface, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, I think it's devoid of a lot of the authenticity and artisanship that some of these sorts of brands are really trying to cultivate. So there you go. Interesting idea, but at the end of the day, not super compelling as a traditional knife. Sorry, Jim, but thanks, Jim. And I hope that this has been interesting and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.